Hi, sixth graders. Hope you guys are having a good week so far. I just wanted to make another video to help you guys with Chapter 15. Chapter 15 is on the immune system. I know that we're kind of hopping around in our book these past couple weeks, but I felt that Chapter 15 being on the immune system and diseases and sicknesses, that this would be a important chapter to cover now with everything that's going on. Hope you guys have read your reading assignments so far. If not, please make sure you guys do those. We're going to start with the introduction on page 361 today, as well as talk about the first part of our chapter, which has to do with diseases and how diseases are spread. Back before they knew that there was bacteria or viruses or other pathogens that caused sicknesses, people didn't really know exactly what caused those, and that germs spread from person to person is what made you sick. They thought that you could be cured by different means. One of those was called bloodletting. They thought that if you were sick, that you had bad blood. And with that bad blood, they would end up draining that bad blood. And if you lose too much blood, that can cause some complications, as well as many patients would die because they had lost too much blood. Today, we know a lot more about what causes sicknesses and illnesses. And we know that healthy habits like hand washing, eating right, can help slow the spread of disease. One thing that the introduction brings out that is super important in this chapter, it talks about the fact that God is still in control and that He is more powerful than any disease. And it gives a verse in Matthew 9 where Jesus is in his ministry taking care of people as well as he's healing people. And I'm going to go ahead and read that in verse 35. And Jesus went about all of the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. So, one thing to keep in mind this whole chapter is that God is more powerful than any disease or sickness that we are going to go through or anything that we're going to be talking this chapter about. Let's start off with diseases this chapter. If God created the world, and we see in Genesis 1 when God is creating the world, and He said everything is very good, it was perfect, there was nothing wrong with it, then why do we have diseases in the world? That goes back to the fall. When Adam and Eve chose to disobey God, everything changed. Death, pain, disease became a part of life. And we've talked about this previously with other natural disasters that are a consequence of sin. Remember, disease is a consequence of sin, but that does not mean that someone that is sick has some big sin in their life that they're dealing with. Everyone has sin in their life, but just because they have a disease does not mean that there is a sin. It just is a consequence that sin is in the world. But also remember that God is more powerful than any disease, and there are many miracles in the Bible that we have seen, and you guys have talked about in Bible class, that demonstrate this for us as well. First thing we're going to talk about is a couple guys that are very famous for discovering different things about how diseases are spread. The first guy is Louis Pasteur. He is one of the first scientists to identify that diseases can be spread by microorganisms that are too small to see. He thought that if you could kill these organisms, then diseases would not spread farther. His theory was called the germ theory of disease, and it's going to change the way people thought about disease as well as the way they treated diseases. Him and a few others would be why doctors now wash their hands between patients, as well as they sterilize their environment that they're working in as well to keep the spread of diseases from spreading too far. These are a timeline that were in your book. All right, now we have a timeline that you'll see in your book of just how far along people have come with All right, in your book, you will see this timeline that's on this slide. It talks about different scientists, doctors, and nurses who help with the spread of contagious diseases. First, we see 1796, Edward Jenner. He is the doctor that discovers the smallpox vaccine. Smallpox was a disease um, that was very rampant at that time. How he discovered the vaccine for smallpox was he noticed that those milkmaids, those that took care of the cows and milked the cows, that they were getting a disease called cowpox, but they would not get the disease of smallpox. So he did some research and found out that cowpox and smallpox are similar. So those that had cowpox would not get smallpox because their immune system would react to the cowpox and then later would react to the smallpox. So if you guys want to look into that story, it's a pretty interesting story, a little bit more about that as well. Then we have a couple doctors about the cleaning of their environment. Dirty hands spread disease. We see that in 1847, 1854. Florence Nightingale is going to be a nurse that's going to clean hospitals, which has saved lives because of not spreading those diseases around. Then we have surgical doctors using disinfectants. Then we talked about Louis Pasteur already, who was in 1868. Then we have specific pathogens cause specific diseases in 1882. And then we'll talk about Alexander Fleming a little bit later on, but he discovered medicine from mold can kill bacteria. We're going to move on to communicable and non-communicable diseases. Today we'll talk about communicable, but let's define both of these first. Communicable are diseases that are contagious. They spread from person to person. These would be like the flu, where one person in your family gets sick and then it goes throughout the whole family. Non-communicable are diseases that are not contagious, like cancer or diabetes, the ones that you can't catch from somebody else. Communicable diseases, like I just said, they are spread from person to person. They are spread by what we call pathogens. Pathogens is going to be anything that causes a disease. They can cause diseases when they invade and attack your body cells, or some are going to interfere with your normal cell function, and others are going to produce a toxin that is harmful to your cells. There are 4 main types of pathogens that we're going to be talking about in the next few slides. Those are protozoans, fungi, bacteria, and viruses. We're most commonly known with bacteria and viruses, but protozoan and fungi both can cause illnesses as well. First, let's talk about protozoans. They are a member of the kingdom Protista. They are single-celled organisms. They're going to be our largest of our pathogens. If you look over on the side where the mouse is, you'll see 2 different types of protozoans, amoebas and parameciums. A lot of times these guys are going to be spread through unclean water, like in the case of amoebic dysentery. If you drink water that has not been purified and filtered, there's a possibility of having an amoeba, and that amoeba can cause dysentery. And another example is malaria. Malaria is actually not going to be caused by the spread of unclean water, but instead it's going to be spread by mosquito bites, causing a protozoan to enter the person's bloodstream. Next, we have fungi. It is spread by spores. Spores are kind of like seeds, and we'll talk about those when we talk about our plant chapter. They are spread with direct contact with those spores. So if a person comes in contact with fungi spores, that is how fungi is spread. Athlete's foot and ringworm are going to be 2 examples of diseases caused by fungi. Then we have our most common and most well-known type of pathogen, which is bacteria. It is going to cause the most infections. It is a single-celled microorganism that can reproduce quickly and be found almost everywhere in the world. They can be found in some of the most harsh climates, as well as heat and cold temperatures as well. Most of the time, these bacteria, the rate of reproduction can be slowed down by heat, which is why our bodies have a response of a fever when you come in contact with bacteria. Harmful bacteria can cause infections like leprosy. Pink eye, strep throat, tetanus are all caused by harmful bacteria. But not all bacteria are harmful. Some are good. We have bacteria that line our digestive tract that help break down food, as well as when you eat yogurt, you are eating helpful bacteria as well. Lastly, we have viruses. Viruses are unique from the other three pathogens because they are non-living. What a virus is usually going to be a protective coat that surrounds genetic material. It cannot move on its own, and it cannot reproduce living cells. It can only reproduce by attaching onto a host cell, injecting its genetic information into that host cell. When that host cell reproduces during cellular reproduction, then it will be reproducing the virus cell as well as its own cells. Viruses are going to be some of our smallest known pathogens, and they can cause stuff like the common cold, chickenpox, flu, and rabies. All right, that is all for this first section. If you guys have any questions, please message me and let me know, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. Also, please make sure you are completing all of the assignments in teams. All right, have a good day, guys.